we're so grateful for your time. I'm going to start with some introductions, and then I'll pull you up here onto the screen, and we'll get going with our conversation, and really with having you have the opportunity, and for us to have the opportunity to hear from you. But for those who might not know me, good morning. I'm Rabbi Sue Shankman. I'm delighted to welcome you on behalf of Washington Hebrew Congregation's Besters. As we get started, I just want to remind everyone of a few housekeeping notes. As you see, I've spotlighted myself for now, and I will bring Representative Raskin up as well once I introduce him, though he needs no introduction, but I will. If you want to see everybody on the screen, you can just change your view to see the gallery view and see everybody. A few other important housekeeping notes. We're going to invite you to remain on mute during the program so that we can really have a conversation where everyone will be able to be focused on the conversation. We know sometimes there are things happening in the various Zoom rooms we find ourselves and things in the background. So we're going to stay on mute so that we're able to fully hear and participate together. If you have a question you would like me to ask our speaker, and I know I have a number of questions that have been shared with me already, but if you have a question you would like asked, you can put it directly to me in the chat, and I can share it with Representative Raskin, although we'll see what our timing is if we have time for questions sort of from the floor, as it were. But we'll do it in our usual format that way, just to help make sure we can all hear and people aren't talking over each other. I also want to express deep gratitude to Joan Churchill for her tenacity in making today's event happen. This is not the first time, and certainly Joan has been passionate about our Inside the Issues events, but I think this is the first time, at least in my memory, that we have two wonderful speakers thanks to Joan Churchill within 1 week. So just as an aside, I'll share some announcements at the end. But this coming Sunday, our Amram Scholar Series will be in person here at Washington Hebrew with Rabbi John Rosov, who some of you may remember from his time here back in the mid-'80s. And he will speak about the American Jewish community, new identity challenges after October 7th. So that's also thanks to Joan Churchill. We are so grateful to her, to the Goodman Fund, and to, again, her tenacity in making sure we have these opportunities to engage in important topics and conversations. And this morning, Washington Hebrew Congregation and I personally am honored to welcome back our speaker, Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland's 8th District. So since he is, as he was already greeting his constituents, since he is a congressman for many of the people here today, I know he's pretty well known. But I just want to briefly recap some of his bona fides. Jamie Raskin is the congressman for the 8th District of Maryland, including most of Montgomery County and part of Prince George's County. In his 4th term as congressman, he was just elected to serve as the ranking member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. Previously, Representative Raskin served 3 terms on the House Judiciary Committee and the Committee on House Administration. He served 2 terms on the Rules Committee and the Coronavirus Select Committee. And during the 117th Congress, he served as chair of the Oversight Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties and chair of the Rules Subcommittee on Expedited Procedure. Rabbi Raskin was lead impeachment manager in the 2nd impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump, and now current President Donald Trump, and served on the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. By the way, many of you know he had a career before he was a congressman. I'm not going to get into that right now, though we're familiar with that as well, and certainly your passion for constitutional law. But while we're very familiar with Congressman Raskin's professional accomplishments, I also want to share just a little bit about who he is as a person as well. We've had these conversations before, but what I do want to share is that every year we bring our high school students to participate in a program through the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the Litaken Seminar. And our students learn about issues and they prepare speeches and they go to Capitol Hill to meet with our senators and representatives and to share the things they're passionate about, the things they want to change in the world, and to get into these conversations and hope that their passionate speeches are going to sway someone or thank someone. And what is remarkable is that we usually meet with staffers, but notably, Representative Raskin makes the effort whenever he can, and he's got even more on his plate today, to meet with the students and to have a conversation that's not about prepared speeches, but is about dialogue and understanding. And he is caring and compassionate about every individual, as we saw from the moment he jumped onto the Zoom. And it is one of the many reasons why we're happy to engage and thrilled to engage in this conversation today, because we also know that the conversation, even when about at times difficult topics, it will be it's one that's always about human dignity and understanding and the relationship. And that truly is a Jewish value that I know is at the heart of his work on Capitol Hill and everywhere else that he goes as well. So Representative Raskin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Rabbi Shankman. Thank you for those beautiful words. You made my day, and I'm thrilled to be with everybody. I've been looking forward to it very much. One correction in that bio that appears to be some flotsam and jetsam from an earlier period of the internet. I actually just became the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee. I was doing oversight last Congress, but now
Great.
I'm over on
Thank you. I apologize. That was a prepared bio for me, and I did not update. So my apologies. We are doing a new. It's a new day, and I think that's how we want to start, is asking you, what is this new day like? What are your takes? And I'm not going to stay up here the whole time because I know you're going to talk. I'm going to type in some questions, and they all know what I look like and have plenty of opportunities to see me. But what are things like on Capitol Hill right now?
Let me just ask you for 1 second. So do you want me to give a general overview of everything going on, or do you just want it to
That's
be
up
more
to you. I have questions, and I'll be listening, so I'll figure out where to go from there.
Okay, let me just tell you what's on my mind, right? Because I'm sure, like every single person on this call, I've been buffeted by events and this thoroughgoing assault on our institutions and on our senses. And I'm trying to make the best understanding of it possible, so I can be as effective as possible answering in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And in the short term, that means I'm coordinating the efforts of the Democratic Caucus, of our involvement, amicus, intervention, and perhaps even some lawsuits of our own, despite all of the adverse precedent on congressional member standing. But we've been involved in lots of these cases already as friends of the plaintiffs. But so the short term really involves defensive maneuvers judicially, in the streets to keep people's spirits and hopes up, and working however we can legislatively to slow down the assault on the rule of law and the Constitution. Medium term, as a politician, I've got my eyes very much focused on the 2026 elections. The great thing about our system of government, as long as it holds, is there are always elections right around the corner. And the 2024 elections were extremely close. Trump beat Kamala Harris with less than 50% of the vote. He ended up with a 2 million vote popular majority, which is one of the lowest popular vote majorities in the last 50 years. Joe Biden beat Trump, for example, in 2020 by 7 million votes. So anyway, we feel that because of all of the outrageous actions that have already happened and those coming up, that we're, every enemy that Trump and Vance and Elon Musk make is going to be another friend for us. And it's our job to go out and build a coalition within the Democratic Party for the 2026 elections. And the House is in a very promising posture for us. We're just down at this point by 2 votes. It started 220 to 215. It's now 217 to 215 with the departure of Elise Stefanik and Matt Gaetz and Mike Walsh. So they can't afford to lose even 1 vote without being in a tie situation. But we see a dozen districts that are in view. But look, I mean, I'm getting old enough. I'm taking the long view on these things. Spinoza said, "Always take the view from eternity." And the real fork in the road is not whether or not they're going to be able to force 2.5 million federal government workers out on a compulsory 8 or 9 month paid vacation. So they're not doing any work for us. They're collecting money and then we're kicking them out of the workforce. And here we're talking about air traffic controllers, food and safety inspectors, NIH cancer and multiple sclerosis research scientists, forest service firefighters. They're trying to force these people out of the workforce. And anyway, I digress. The real fork in the road is between democracy and autocracy, or any of its variations. I mean, just monarchical style dictatorship, techno dictatorship, which is what Elon Musk and his Silicon Valley libertarian billionaires have in mind for us, theocracy, or just any other collection of rule by dictators. And from the standpoint of democracy, of course, all of them have the quality of the emperor's new clothes. None of them can be justified because they don't recognize the equal dignity and voice and participation of everybody, the consent of the governed, as Jefferson had it in the Declaration of Independence. So that's kind of my short-term, medium-term, long-term thinking. But look, the purported rationale for this attack on our institutions and values and laws is that they're fighting corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm working on a speech that I will give very soon on the floor of the House. I might even give it on TV first, but basically about how this is an exact inversion of what the truth is. The very first thing that they did on the Friday of inauguration week was to sack 17 inspectors general. And I don't need to tell, a shrewd, experienced Washington area audience what the inspectors general are. These are corruption fighters. Last year, they saved us $91 billion in actual waste, fraud, and abuse throughout the federal government. They fired all of them, violating the law in the process, because the law states that the president must notify Congress 30 days in advance of the dismissal of any of the IGs, and set forth specifically a bill of substantive particulars explaining why they're being fired. None of that happened. And the reason they're being fired, of course, is to clear the way for total corruption, which is very much the agenda of the new Trump administration. They dismantled the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Also, in that first week in office, they have been working to dismantle the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which saved us $31 billion from various ripoff schemes and ripoff artists. The CFPB lowered bank overdraft fees from an average of $30 to $5, and they lowered credit card late fees from an average of $42 to $8. That's what the CFPB does. And yet, Elon Musk has called it a criminal organization, like he called USAID the criminal organization. USAID is, of course, the creation of John F. Kennedy and Congress to have programs like Food for Peace, which pays American farmers, or it did pay American farmers, $2 billion a year for their food to send to starving people in Africa and other parts of the world. And they've just shut it all down, with Elon Musk pronouncing it a criminal organization. His views on that may have been influenced by the fact that AID was doing an investigation into Elon Musk and Tesla for their relationship, both with the Chinese Communist Party and also with Putin in Russia, as his Starlink X program was allegedly shut down, the one that Ukraine was using in order to prevent Russian military maneuvers against Russia. And they were doing an investigation, the whole thing, and that got shut down, just like the hundreds of investigations taking place at the CFPB against Elon Musk and at the Department of Labor and the NLRB. All of these agencies and commissions being shut down by Elon Musk. They were investigating him, and they had all these complaints against him. Which is, of course, a narrow way of looking at it, because I think it's just a broader attempt to dismantle the anti-corruption infrastructure as Trump and Musk and all of their forces decide to take over the government for their own purposes. And that's, of course, what we saw back in the first Trump administration, just the demolition of the foreign and domestic emoluments clauses. In Article 1, Section 9, it says that nobody in the federal government, including the president, shall receive a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office or a title, quote, of any kind, whatever, from a foreign prince, king, or state. And we've been able to document more than $10 million that were pocketed by Donald Trump during that first administration. I know that seems like chump change. Nancy Pelosi was yelling at me about our report saying $10 million. They're getting so much more than that. Of course they are. I mean, we saw that Jared Kushner got $2 billion right after the administration ended from Saudi Arabia. But no president had come close to doing anything like that, literally pocketing money from foreign states during his administration. And this time, they're not even bothering to pretend that they're not all in business. In fact, Musk is still in business. Trump and his family are still in business. All of them are still in business. Okay. So all of which is to say, corruption is not their target. Corruption is their MO. Corruption is their project. That's the whole purpose of having their administration. Now, that then implies a kind of lawlessness. They are running roughshod over congressional power under Article 1. We, through the Article 1 lawmaking process, created the Agency for International Development. We created the CFPB. We created the Department of Education. Let's say you believed all of their propaganda nonsense and you wanted to dismantle them, you would have to come to Congress to do it. And then we would have hearings on it, and we would have debate on it, and Congress would vote as to whether or not to dismantle an agency or department, which Congress created and which Congress has appropriated. And an appropriation act is a law. It's like the law saying you shall not assault federal officers. So an appropriation act is not a budgetary recommendation or the first part of a negotiation with the executive branch. What's the president's job? The core part of Article 2 is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. That's the president's job, to implement the laws that are passed by Congress, right? I don't even like when my colleagues get up on the Democratic side and say, we're three co-equal branches. I mean, that's nonsense. First of all, co-equal is not even a word. That's like extremely unique or something like that. Somebody who's advocating the idea that we're three equal branches defies the entire structure of the Constitution, right? The preamble of the Constitution leads right into Article 1. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and preserve to ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty, do hereby ordain and establish the Constitution of these United States, then leads right into the first sentence of Article 1, which says all legislative power is vested in the Congress of the United States. And then you got pages of what all of congressional power are. Article 1, Section 8 alone goes on for 17 sections, setting forth regulating commerce domestically and internationally, budget, spending, going after the pirates, the post office, regulating the district that's to become the seat of government. It goes through all that stuff. Then Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 says, and all other powers necessary and proper to the execution of the foregoing powers. And after all that, that's when you get to Article 2 and the president. My colleague Jim Jordan has been running around saying, it's right there in Article 2. All executive power is vested in the President of the United States. Yeah, it is. But what is the executive power? It's to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. I mean, one of the four short sections of Article 2 is all about how you impeach a president for treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. If we're an equal branch, why is it that we've got the power to impeach the president and he doesn't have the power to impeach us, right? Ours is a representative constitutional democracy conceived in insurgency against kings and monarchs. And our Constitution explicitly bans titles of nobility. So the corruption has embroiled them in lawlessness and violating the basic concepts of our Constitution. And of course, they're trashing the First Amendment already, just trashing it. I mean, Donald Trump has kicked out the Associated Press from the White House repeatedly because they won't go along with calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, right? If you don't use the words that he wants you to use, even if the rest of the world doesn't use them, and that's not what the law is, then they'll kick you out. J.D. Vance, when he demanded the rehiring of Elon Musk's junior night crew computer hacking fascist, the one who was saying that he would like to see both Gaza and Israel disappear from the face of the earth, the guy who was saying, let's validate Indian hate, the guy who was saying, I was a racist before it was hip, before it was cool. When that guy resigned, he wasn't even fired, he resigned. J.D. Vance then takes to Twitter to say, that guy should be rehired, and we should demand that the Wall Street Journal fire the reporter who correctly reported on what that guy was saying on Twitter. Okay, so we've got this thoroughgoing assault on First Amendment values. Then J.D. Vance goes over to Europe and to the summit conference on security in Europe and says, the problem is not Putin and Russia and Ukraine. The problem is not China and Hong Kong and Taiwan or Nepal. The problem is you, Europe, because you're not allowing the extreme right party to express itself freely enough. And then he goes out and he meets with the Alternative for Deutschland, which is what Elon Musk did. Elon Musk openly endorsed them. Vance didn't endorse them, but he may as well have. It was a de facto endorsement of this neo-fascist party in Germany.
If I can jump in, because
yeah.
as the questions are
on a note of hope.
Yeah, no, I want to jump in actually on that topic because it's one of several that I know we were hoping to talk about, but one of the questions from a number of folks is what are you and your fellow members of Congress actively doing to stop anti-Semitism and the uptick of Jewish hate in the U.S.? And along with that, as others have asked, and even in response to what you just shared, how do we address that, and how does Congress address that? Does Congress address it when it happens overseas and when it appears as though, hold on a sec, when it appears as though there is some partnership or potential partnership that we don't necessarily want, certainly doesn't make us feel safer. If anything, in this moment, we're already feeling this threat of anti-Semitism here, and to know that it is being stoked abroad. What can we do? What are you all doing, and what can we do in our community?
Well, I appreciate that question very much. I mean, it's horrifying that we're the ones essentially stoking it abroad. I mean, that's the amazing thing that everybody's talking about in Germany. I've got some German friends who told me everybody's running around saying now it is Germany which is trying to uphold the standards of civilization and democracy and freedom and equality for all against America, which is openly promoting a neo-fascist party whose leaders have used anti-Semitic and Nazi rhetoric. Um, and they're just astounded. And the papers today are filled with people talking about whether America under Trump is going to break with our European allies. Where are they going to get? Are they going to pull us out of NATO? I mean, they're clearly trying to pull the plug on support for the people of Ukraine against Putin. So, what are we going to do? I think everything we are doing to resist and oppose these authoritarian efforts at home is part and parcel of standing up for democracy and freedom around the world. Anti-Semitism is the gateway to destruction of liberal democracy. It is, and it always has been. And so we have to reject the efforts by Trump and Vance and Musk to validate these extremist parties, whether it's in Germany or Austria or France or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else on Earth. That means that we've got to be acting in an effective transnational way to be supporting democratic parties and governments and movements.
Thank you. And you talked a little earlier about looking ahead to midterm elections, and there are a number of questions connected to that. And I'm just going to share two that really touch on what a number of others asked as well. The first is there any hope to flipping the open GOP seats in Florida and New York in special elections? Is it a waste of time and money to support the Dems in those districts? That's one. And another question is that the Democratic Party appears to be lacking any real leadership after the 2024 elections. Who do you see rising as the real leaders of the party who will counter the leadership structure within the Republican Party? Oh, wait, you're muted. Hold on. Convenient.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. It's funny. I was just having a conversation with some of the people in the House leadership about that very question, about the Matt Gaetz seat in Florida. Sorry, and about Elise Stefanik's seat in the Adirondacks, where actually I campaigned in 2024. I spent a weekend up there, and I was asking whether I should go back again. And those seats are like R plus 25, as we say. That is, the Republicans on average are winning by 25 points. So I wouldn't necessarily think that, we're going to take the House majority back from any of those seats. If they were closer, those people probably would not have been appointed to the administration. But having said that, in this business, like I like to say that, I like to say that no good act is wasted. So, if Stefanik won by 20 points in the last election and we can cut it to 10 points or 8 points, that's a huge victory for us. And it shows people where things are moving. So, you can make a personal judgment about whether you're able to help there or not. I think I will go back to campaign for our people in Adirondacks, on that theory. And I'm going down to Florida too. So I think, who knows? And people are up in arms. I mean, really, people are just outraged and incensed about what's taking place with the federal workers, with the LGBTQ community, with the immigrants and refugees and so on. So, in terms of leadership, I mean, I've seen this. I've been around the track enough now to know that if you don't win the presidency, and then people are going to say, well, the party is rudderless or the party's leaderless, and we don't know necessarily who our standard bearer will be next time. But and that's part of the exciting dimension of this moment, that circumstances will generate leaders in different domains of the political fight, and we're in the fight of our lives here. And so we'll see who can stand and deliver and who doesn't. And I think that will be sort of the litmus test, the acid test for who will go forward to lead us in the future.
There's a lot of concern in the chat, at least the messages and questions I'm getting about what is legal, illegal, and in this moment, one of the questions is if it is illegal to dismantle USAID, then how did it get dismantled? Why did the USAID employees comply? Why are these things happening if they're illegal? And how is there so much mute compliance?
Well, there's a difference, of course, between the law on paper and then the law in reality, especially when you're dealing with a lawless actor like Donald Trump, who, because of the Supreme Court, feels complete immunity and impunity for anything he does, and then assumes that the people around him enjoy the same immunity and impunity, which they don't. He would, in any event, have to pardon them for crimes, but none of them is immune to civil actions, injunctions, and so on. And please let the word go out. We are winning every single day in court. We now have more than a dozen federal TROs, temporary restraining orders, PIs, preliminary injunctions against every dimension of this nightmare. The Treasury Department has been enjoined from any further divulgence or release of people's private data. This is like the most massive security data breach in American history, what they've done. The idea that Elon Musk would have access to everybody's social security information, financial data, taxpayer information, and so on is outrageous. That's been enjoined in court. The AID workers have an injunction against their being dismissed at this point. The FBI agents, 6,000 of them, they wanted to round up because they've been involved in investigation of the January 6th insurrectionists. And that has been upheld as a violation of, that order has been enjoined as a violation of their First Amendment rights and their due process rights. So we're winning on each one of these things, and we're going to continue to fight them in court. Now, I know Trump thinks that they're playing the long game, that, even if you've got real judges in the district court, in the District of Columbia and the DC Circuit and other circuits, they will get it up to the Supreme Court, and Thomas and Alito and the gang will find a way to rule in Trump's favor. And maybe that's right, and maybe that's wrong. I mean, they've won an absurd and disproportionate number of completely specious and ridiculous cases up there. On the other hand, they've lost some too. So we would just have to see how it goes. That's the importance of fighting them and fighting them everywhere, and also engaging in the public education around the Constitution so that people precisely understand, as the questioner said, that these maneuvers against democracy are illegal. They're unconstitutional. And the same thing with the civil service. I mean, what is the heart of the civil service? You can't get fired for political reasons, right? That's why we have a civil service going back to the Pendleton Act. And that's exactly what's taking place here. Under the civil service rules, you can only be fired for professional misconduct, like you're embezzling from your agency, or poor performance reviews. But all these prosecutors who have been fired, like the dozen prosecutors who were fired in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. for prosecuting January 6th insurrectionists who violently assaulted our police officers, had excellent performance reviews. All of them. All of the people who just got forced out from the New York U.S. Attorney's Office or the Office of Public Integrity in DOJ or the head of the criminal division, they all have superior performance reviews. They're being forced out because they refuse to bow down to Donald Trump and political orders as prosecutors trying to uphold independent law enforcement.
Related somewhat, one of the overarching themes coming through many of these questions is that the House is on fire, and that there needs to be action now. And again, coming back to the question, what are Democrats doing to join forces and get the message out? There's a sense that the Dems are floundering at the moment.
Well,
yeah.
I'm perfectly willing to accept any criticism, like I think all my colleagues are. But at a certain point, that doesn't help. I mean, I'm working 7 days a week. We're having town halls every single day. I say a rally a day keeps the fascists away. I've been to, I don't know, maybe 10 rallies so far. I go everywhere. And I think, and a lot of that, I think, is to give people a sense of solidarity and hope moving forward in the future. But we're also working on the litigation, and I'm raising money constantly for the 2026 elections because we've got to be ready for that. So, I think I'm fairly reflective and representative of my colleagues, and I don't think that we're floundering, and I don't think that we don't have a plan, but I do think we're in the fight of our lives. So at a certain point, I think people should stop pointing fingers at us and let's deal with the real issue here, which is we have people who don't respect our form of government. I mean, if you listen to what the Silicon Valley libertarian billionaires say themselves, they don't believe in democracy anymore. Somebody like Elon Musk thinks that democracy is obsolete and that we're living in a post-constitutional era, as their hero Curtis Yarvin puts it. They believe in corporate monarchy today. Listen to what Steve Bannon has had to say about Elon Musk. He calls Elon Musk a truly evil individual who wants to create a techno state. He's even said, we don't need a racist from apartheid South Africa to come over here to run our government. Of course, he thinks we have enough racists here in America to run our government. We don't need a racist from South Africa to come and do it. But there are people in the Republican Party who are very clear about what's going on with Elon Musk. He wants to usher us out of constitutional democracy into a techno-feudal state where the vast majority of people are reduced to the role of serfs. So the people with high IQs can govern everybody else. And, I don't have to tell you about Elon Musk engaging in fascist salutes and then pretending not to know what it was. Actually, his response to that was really interesting when it created this uproar, backlash, not just in the Jewish community, but kind of across the society. And Elon Musk, he didn't say, oh, I didn't mean that as a fascist salute. I didn't mean as a Nazi salute. He said, don't you think you guys are overplaying the Hitler thing again? Nobody had even mentioned Hitler. He said, is everybody really Hitler? So these are very dangerous people. So I don't want to be in a mode where I'm, attacking Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or anyone. Everybody is limited in politics, but these people, they're trying to do their best right now, and I'm sticking with them until we get through this nightmare. I don't know if somebody's got another political party we can work with, but right now the Democratic Party is the Democracy Party.
So one of the questions is wondering what the Democratic plan is for the upcoming budget to be passed. Will they try to block it? Are there rumblings of Republican cooperation with Democrats?
Well, we're all behind Hakeem Jeffries, and we're unified and focused in that direction, and that's always worked for us before. Our position is the GOP controls the House, the Senate, and the White House. If they can do this without us, they will do it without us because they've done everything else without us. You think they've consulted us on any of this stuff? I mean, the truth is Trump and Musk haven't even consulted the Republicans in Congress. They're just running along like lapdogs saying, oh, yeah, this is fine. This is fine with us. Go ahead and destroy our lawmaking power. Go ahead and usurp our oversight power with your fake anti-corruption crusade. Go ahead and do that, right? So nobody's consulting us. If they can get agreement, then they're going to run right over us. But we don't think that they can get agreement because too many of them, for example, have never voted to raise the debt ceiling. Like 40 or 50 of them said that they would never vote to raise the debt ceiling. Well, that's what Trump wants to do. His primary objective is to raise the debt ceiling by $4.2 trillion so they can give another massive tax break to the wealthiest corporations in America. I mean, which is another essential part of an authoritarian or fascist program. You continually dismantle any social programs that would help the people, like Medicaid, for example, which is the big target here. Dismantle that, slice it in half, take the money and give it to people who definitely are not in need of that money. But if they can get the votes for it, they will, but we don't think they can. So that means they've got to come to us. So they want to sit down with us. then let's engage in that old-fashioned art of legislative negotiation. One thing we know is we are not going to keep the government open so they can dismantle the government. In other words, we're not going to vote for their $4 trillion giveaway, tax giveaway, so they can continue to dismantle AID, CFPB, the Department of Education, NIH, NOAA, the FDA, and so on. We're not going to do that. I'm certainly not going to do that. So I want a tough, hard negotiation where we negotiate an end to this authoritarian nightmare, and then we reopen the government and we try to put things on a more normal course until we can get to the 2026 elections.
So a new question in the chat. Have any Democratic congressional members had direct conversation with Trump since these latest actions?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I am aware of. I know some of my colleagues went into Speaker Johnson's office to talk about the various criminal and civil violations taking place, and I've exchanged a couple of words with Mike Johnson, in the hallway. But I'm trying to reach out all the time. I mean, as you know, Liz Cheney's a very close friend of mine. Adam Kinziger's office was across from mine. I think those social relationships are incredibly important in this very nerve-wracking time that we're in. And when we had our first hearing together in the Judiciary Committee with Jim Jordan, I said, I know we may have our political differences, but I just hope if it comes to the point where America is starting to look more like Orban's Hungary or Pinochet's Chile or Putin's Russia, that you will stand up for the freedom of your colleagues on this committee and everybody we represent. And I said it with utter sincerity, because who knows where this thing is going.
So a few more questions, and one that has been echoed. I can't tell you how many. We'd have to go back through the chat later on to see how many people asked some form of this, which is, what can we as citizens really do on the grassroots level to make change, A, and B, on a more specific, what do you suggest we do for our transgender teen friends and their families? How can we help them remain safe in Maryland?
Thank you for both of those questions.
And then the other question that's coming, but I'll leave it later just to give you I know there are a lot of people who want to talk about Israel as well.
Great. Well, okay, so number one, I think the critical thing here is that people have to take care of themselves, because this is a long haul thing, right? This is not a 2-day struggle or a 2-week struggle. I mean, this might be for the rest of our lives that we're in this thing. So you've got to take care of yourself and take care of your family and take care of your friends. Politically speaking, outside of those most intimate circles, we've got to build and reaffirm and solidify strong relationships among different communities. So I'm glad that this questioner asked about the LGBTQ community. The faith community has got to be in strong alliance and coalition with the LGBTQ community, with the immigrant community, with the labor unions, with the federal workers. That's critical. Why? Because we can't predict what all of the particular tactical skirmishes and conflicts are going to be. But if we've got the relationships, we will be ready to deploy and to go to court, to go to Congress, to go to the legislatures, to go to the streets, whatever it is. So it's the relationships that have got to be strengthened and fortified right now. Now, in terms of the transgender kids, I met with several different groups of transgender families this week, and it is a horrifying time for those kids. A number of the parents described their kids to me as suicidal, that they are so depressed and shocked about what's being said about them and what's going on. Not just the formal, the executive order, which said that no hospital or health center could get any money if they treated people for, gender dysphoria or for gender conversion or any of those things, but that their existence is literally being wiped away by the mega assault. The idea that there are only two genders and transgender people don't exist. And so that's a very tough, hard thing to put on an 11-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid or a 14-year-old. or whatever, a lot of them do feel like Montgomery County, Maryland is a sanctuary, like a place where they are coming to because they see an accepting community. And so we've got to make sure that in terms of the county council and the state legislature and the municipalities, that people continue to show that strong solidarity and embrace of all of our families. But we have to continue to fight this in court. There have already been some victories against that executive order in joining the cutoff of money to the hospitals and to the health centers, because it's just pure discrimination. And it goes beyond discriminating against that particular program, but the entire hospital, right? So it's like shutting down an entire hospital because you disagree with, conversations that are taking place or treatment that is taking place in one part of it. So this is obviously out of an authoritarian fascist Nazi playbook. You pick the most vulnerable and numerically small minorities in society, and then you scapegoat them and you go after them, whether it's a religious minority, a racial minority, an ethnic minority, a sexual minority, or what have you. And that is the critical importance of solidarity. And I've been, I hope, a strong ally to the LGBTQ community. But I agreed with them to speak out more. And I said, the truth was, when I have met with people in the immigrant community, they don't want people speaking out and they don't want people bringing attention to them because they fear that's dangerous. And so I haven't known exactly what to do. But my sense is, at least from these groups of families I've talked to, they want people to be speaking out about solidarity with the transgender kids, as well as every other part of the LGBTQ community.
Thank you. So let's talk about Israel. I know that is many who are on here know we're hosting an event tonight marking 500 days of the hostages, with some released hostages as well as hostage family members. And I know that one of the questions that was asked was about your expectations regarding Israel and the Middle East, and what your position is currently on future aid to Israel.
So it is good news that some hostages have come home, although of course they've been in generally dreadful conditions and are not in good shape. And we've got to make sure that we guarantee the return of all the hostages. And I know there's a huge march in Tel Aviv on that. I can't remember if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where 500,000 people came out to say, complete the process. Let's not blow the whole thing up and just go back to war. And the hostage families that I've been in close touch with, have been taking that position from the very beginning, that the paramount objective must be the return of the hostages and not any other political agenda anybody's got in mind. Now, there's a new political agenda on the table, which is Donald Trump says Gaza has been turned into a hellhole, a demolition site, and he's going to rescue the Palestinian people by evicting them, by engaging in ethnic expulsion and cleansing, which is a war crime, which is a violation of international humanitarian law and a crime against humanity. And so I strongly oppose that. I am a strong supporter of Israel, the Jewish democratic state, and believe strongly that this is a moment where we can be plunged back into hell again if Donald Trump proceeds apace, or we can really move towards a two-state solution, and to recognize the aspirations and the human rights of the Palestinian people alongside the Jewish people in Israel, including all my cousins who live over there, who want to get out of this state of constant war and anxiety and move to some kind of peaceful future. So I think it is time for us, at least the democratic forces in America, to be standing up for democracy and human rights and peace all over the world. I mean, I just don't see any alternative to that. I don't see any decent alternative to it.
And I know, again, coming back to anti-Semitism, there has been a link in the last year and a half of what's happening in Israel and the rise in anti-Semitism that we are experiencing here. And the question that has come up again is how, what do we do about that? What are you doing about that specifically? And know that this is also expressed with gratitude for the work that you're doing. And I think for many of us, that feeling of the daily fear that many are feeling and expressing. I'm certainly seeing a lot of that in the questions and the tone of some of these questions that are coming up. What is the responsibility that you hold and that others hold in that anti-Semitism narrative in really focusing on that, because it is becoming it's certainly not a pandemic, but it is an epidemic, and it is of proportions that we haven't experienced before, and it seems to be receiving license at all levels of both government and those connected to government, as
Yeah,
we've seen in recent weeks.
well, look, I'm not telling anybody on this call anything they don't know. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's not the way we grew up. It's certainly not the way I grew up. And I have seen more anti-Semitism and more vicious anti-Semitism in the last several years than I saw for the rest of my life, all put together. And, I've had to go to court to get protection orders against death threats. I mean, I was the lead impeachment manager in the second impeachment. And so I've been treated to a complete potpourri assortment of every vile anti-Semitic attack, insult you can imagine. When Kevin McCarthy became the speaker, he withdrew security from us. So we've had to pay security ourselves when the death threats go beyond an acceptable level, as they say. But we've seen anti-Semitic graffiti in our schools. We've seen people attacked in the streets. So it's a very dark period. But one of the problems I have with my Republican colleagues is that they are willing to accept things like Nazi salutes or Donald Trump having dinner with a self-proclaimed neo-Nazi Holocaust revisionist, Nick Fuentes, as long as Trump gives Bibi Netanyahu whatever he wants, then it doesn't make any difference how deeply embroiled the Republican Party becomes with anti-Semites and neo-Nazis here. Well, that's a terrifying development from my perspective. I had this argument with Elise Stefanik, who, after she engaged in her serial interrogatories against the college presidents and, started counting the scalps, 1 down, 2 down, 3 down, and 4 down, I said, okay, great. You've gotten rid of some college presidents at some liberal arts colleges in New England. How do you feel about Nicholas Fuentes, neo-Nazi Holocaust revisionist who has dinner with Kanye West at Donald Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago? How do you feel about Trump saying there were very fine people on both sides of an anti-Semitic riot in Charlottesville, right? And just started laying out for her. And you know what her answer was? Basically, Trump has given Netanyahu everything he's asked for. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He gave us the Golan Heights. In other words, the American Jewish community, it's just all Israelis in disguise. And even there, we're just like hood members in disguise. We all agree with Netanyahu. So if Netanyahu gets what he wants, we can let anti-Semitism and racism run rampant in our country. And I just reject it. And that might not be a popular view with some people, but that's the way I feel. And that's the way I feel for my family, for my Jewish family, my Jewish friends, my Jewish constituents, and also my Jewish relatives in Israel. I don't think that is a pathway of safety. for the Jewish community, even if that's your only goal.
And this is the final, this touches on it. I know there were many, many more questions, but this is related because when we talk about what we can do, we do have friends and allies. How, and thank you to Pastor Jim Eaton, who joins us as he so often does. And his question is, how can multi-faith efforts help? How can Christians best stand up against anti-Semitism and against this authoritarianism?
Thank you, Reverend Eaton, and thank you, Rabbi Shankman. I mean, I think that that's the crucial question right now. As you know, they have dismantled the Agency for International Development. And although the courts are involved, and that's going well on the ground, because these people are my constituents, people are not getting paid. They've cut off money to aid. There are, thousands of tons of food shipments which are starting to rot because they've put a stop work order on everything. These are religious groups, right, that are involved in this, like Lutheran services, like Catholic relief services, like HIAS for the refugees. The religious community has got to get together on a multi-faith basis now to demand that the aid be resumed to starving populations, to hungry populations around the world. That's American food and American farmers who are being hurt by the cutoff of payments. And these are children who are dying. And then meantime, you've got J.D. Vance and Elon Musk insulting all of these religious efforts. I think they said that the Lutherans were a criminal organization. Go and look at the things that they're tweeting out about different religious groups who are complaining. So to me, like, let's take the stand there. It unifies farmers with federal workers who've been cut off, with people abroad, and with the faith community. If you guys organize a rally, whatever, I will be there. I will be your first speaker. But please, like, let's do it. Get in touch with all the Lutheran groups. I know the Catholic Relief Services, the Mennonite. I mean, there's a lot of them who are out there who are under attack. And whenever they say anything, they get insulted, aggressively insulted and defamed, really, by Musk. Who also he wrote, I think, AID RIP. This is a criminal organization. He did the same thing with CFBP. So, like, I think we've got to get that outrage level up, but we've got to extend that coalition. So please, let's bring in everybody in the faith community. And thanks for raising that. One other person, I'm sorry I haven't been able to keep up with all the messages here. And thank you for your kind words, everybody. But like on DC, yes, they very much want to take over Washington, D.C. to our friends in D.C. They see those as thousands of jobs that should be available to their mega sycophants. They want to take over those jobs, and they don't like the fact that D.C. stands up for gay rights, for women's reproductive rights, and so on. And, I've been a big champion of statehood for D.C., and I will do that if that's what people in D.C. want to do. But I saw Mayor Bowser. I said, now might be the time to come back to Maryland, because things could get very, very ugly if they decide to have a mega coup within the District of Columbia.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your patience and for responding to the questions I threw at you. There are many, many more that were both in the chat, but also sent to me directly, and tried to bunch some of those together. So I do also know this is not the first time you've spoken with us. I'm sure it won't be the last. We always look forward to having you with us, joining us for different events, but even more for standing up for us in the halls of Congress and everywhere else as well. So I just want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi
Grateful.
Shankman.
You are welcome. We look forward to seeing you hopefully soon in person. And thank you for bringing your heart into everything that you do. And
I appreciate it. And if you can save all those questions for me, I'll try to get back to everybody.
I will. Okay. And I know
because I know
people
a lot of people are wondering, well, what are we going to do when they stop obeying the injunctions. And that's what contempt citations are for. And criminal contempt, it's true, it relies on the U.S. Marshal Service in DOJ. But civil contempt, I've been trying to point out to people, that's totally within the control of the court. So if Elon Musk is disobeying a court order, you start slapping, $50 million, $100 million a day fines on him. That's within the control of the court to slap a lien on somebody or to confiscate their accounts or what have you. So we've got to reinforce the rule of law at every turn here.
Thank you. And I do know we're going to send Representative Raskin the questions. I do know that he will respond. He followed up with our students as well individually, and has really, again, it's about the relationship and recognizing the importance of that. So thank you. I do want to share with folks here a few upcoming events. Thank you, Representative Raskin. Again,
Thank you much.
I'm grateful for your time today.
Tough, everybody. Hang tough.
Thank you.